Welcome back to Tech Forge. My name's Nathan. I'd like to start out today by apologising for the state of my voice. I've managed to pick up one of those classic Victorian colds. It's such a great time to be living in Victoria, such a great time of year. And it's only taken about a full packet of soothers just to get the voice to this state, so stick with us as we try to get through it today. So it's a bit of a good and a bad news day for those of you who are waiting for the DG85 water cooling build. That's been put on the back burner a little bit. This is because a very good friend of mine has commissioned me to build a system for him, to pick the parts and then put it all together. We've decided on building a Ryzen 2700X system, which of course is all the rage at the moment, so it has taken a little bit of priority. So stick with myself and Willow as we go through the parts and have a look at what we're going to be building.
The design brief for this particular system by the user, I will neither confirm nor deny that this person is Diddy, was very specific. They asked for a system that can stream while gaming, while also offering a long shelf life to avoid having to upgrade for a while. Naturally, I went straight for a Zen-based platform, given that AMD will be with AM4 until 2020, and have promised that generation will be fully compatible with all previous AM4 platforms, which will give Mr. Anonymous, a solid foundation for gaming well beyond the 2020 timeframe. Starting with the case, which is more of a fundamental decision than most give credit, we decided on the Fractal Design Meshify C. Mr. Anonymous specified that a smaller footprint was desired without compromising on internal support or thermal performance, with a budget of around 150 Australian dollars. And at that point, the Meshify C was a no-brainer. I could literally talk about this case for minutes, and I will in another video. Stay tuned for a full review of the Meshify C in your notification box. Given that we are looking at AMD's new Zen Plus architecture as the basis of this build, I've chosen the Crosshair 7 Hero Wi-Fi by ASUS as the foundation to build upon. This thing is loaded with features and packed with stuff and things. The VRM used on the Crosshair 7 is a 10+2 layout with 10 phases for CPU and 2 for the SoC. And ASUS have decided to split the layout, with the top 6 phases and bottom 4 phases being for CPU V-Core, and the 2 for SoC are in the middle, which greatly improves the spread of the thermal load over the VRM heatsinks for even better thermal performance. Let's not forget these are 60 amp international rectifier MOSFETs in the VRMs, rather than the more common 40 amp MOSFETs, so absolutely beefcake power support phases, which will handle any CPU you throw at it today and into the future. BIOS and memory overclocking features are improved upon again, and the inclusion of memory profiles for Samsung B-Die memory from famous overclocker The Stilt is a great carryover from the Crosshair 6 Hero. One thing to note, however, is the top M.2 slot does share bandwidth with the 16x PCIe slot your graphics card will inhabit, so be sure to use the lower M.2 slot for your NVMe devices and just relocate the M.2 heatsink to that location. I really don't know why ASUS don't have it there from factory. CPU-wise, of course, it's none other than the star of the Zen Plus show, the 2700X. Noted for its willingness to boost to higher frequencies out of the box than many first-gen Ryzen chips could at max overclock, coupled with its 8 cores and 16 threads, this chip is a beast and just noms on any task you will throw at it. AMD have done an amazing job working on the SenseMI functions that allow extended frequency range 2, or XFR2, and precision boost 2, or PB2, to stretch the potential of the CPU depending on power, thermal and voltage headroom, without the user having to do any mucking around with manual overclocking. To get the absolute most out of XFR2 and BB2, you would ultimately want to get the biggest, baddest cooler you can afford, but when the 2700X comes with a cooler as sexy as the Wraith Prism, we just can't help but want to see how far we can go just on the stock cooling it comes with. For a stock cooler, it goes without saying the Prism is unrivaled, and I must say that AMD, with help from Cooler Master, have really outdone themselves with this package. Just as important to cooling with Zen Plus will of course be RAM. With the tie-in between the Infinity Fabric that connects the CCX modules inside a Ryzen processor and the operating frequency of one's RAM, it's fairly obvious that faster RAM helps Ryzen a lot, and Samsung B-Die is the type to go for. If you want B-die memory for Ryzen and aren't sure when purchasing, make sure to ask the vendor. If they aren't sure, find a better vendor. A quick and dirty way is to look for RAM with 3200 MHz clock speed and CAS latency 14, as seen on this kit from G-Skill. The B-die RAM, coupled with a decent 3200 MHz clock and low latency 14 timings, mean this kit will bring more performance out of the Zen Plus processor than a cheaper set with lower speed and timings. To aid in those game load times, because honestly, who has time to wait? We have the Samsung 960 250GB M.2 NVMe drive, with speeds potentially up to 3200 megabytes a second sequential read and 1500 megabytes per second sequential write. The 960 EVO represents 6.5 times increase in read and 3.5 times increase in write speeds over most typical SATA-based SSD drives. Taking care of the important task of keeping the Open Airflow Meshify C case fed with fresh air are two sets of deep cool RF RGB fans in the 140mm and 120mm variety. Compatible with the Asus motherboard's Aura Sync or using the standalone inline controller, these fans give us the bling we need to make sure everyone knows your rig is serious business. Not just a pretty face, the RF140 double pack, which we used as intake at the front of the case, will push a respectable 64 CFM of air each at just 1200 RPM, meaning a good balance between noise and airflow. The RF120 triple pack, which we used as top and rear exhaust, are good for 56.5 CFM at 1500 RPM, and with a custom fan curve later on, will balance out the airflow to provide optimum thermal performance. Included in these packs are PWM fan hubs, an RGB controller, as well as RGB connectors and extenders. Powering the system is a Corsair TX750M semi-modular 80 plus gold rated power supply, which will be enough to power everything seen so far, as well as any future additions to the system. A wink wink. With fixed sleeve ATX and EPS power connectors and flat black modular cables, we get options to include only as many cables as needed, for neatness, which when you have RGB and a tempered glass window, that's kind of important. Add to this a continuous power rating of 50 degrees Celsius, 25 amps on both 3 volt and 5 volt rails, 62 amps on the 12 volt rail, and an 80 plus gold efficiency rating, the TX750M ticks all the boxes for this build without breaking the bank. It's probably not Diddy then.
So there you have it, lords and ladies. It's a complete rundown of the parts we'll be using in the build. The keen-eyed amongst you may have noticed that we're missing one particular crucial component, and that's of course the GPU. At the moment we don't have one. All we have is a placeholder, which is a MSI 1050 Ti, the low profile version, and that'll be just sort of used to get us by until these next generation cards come out, perhaps in the next month or two if we're lucky. And once these new generation cards are available, we'll be on the lookout for something between a 1080 and an 1170, everything in between, 1080 Ti. We'll have a look at the market, we'll see what the prices, we'll see what the prices are like, we'll see what the prices are like, and we'll go from there. But for now, what we've got coming up is the build video, of course, and then after that there'll be an overclocking and performance look at. I don't think we can really do too much CPU testing because we've only got a 1050 Ti to push the graphics, so maybe we'll just have a look at boost clocks, the boost states, see how Ryzen performs under various power loads, and maybe even a look at RAM overclocking just quickly. Who knows? If you do want to catch those videos, please click the subscribe button and don't forget to click the little bell icon beside it to get notifications when they do go live. Now it's time for me to get on out of here. Thank you all so much for watching. Catch you in the next one.